Hey, this is Tim Nations bringing you our March Leadership Lab for Grow Groups. This is the online version, and so I want to take just a few minutes to talk to you about the training that we went through as a part of the latest Leadership Lab. And this one's really important for us in our groups because the topic has to do with helping people to take growth risks. And as you know, our groups are really about life change. They're about providing an environment where personal transformation can take place. And so one of the ways that we can do that as leaders is to help people take growth risks, and we're going to talk about what that is. But I want to share you some of the information from the survey that relates to this particular topic. Of the quality characteristics that we talk about in our groups, growth was the lowest rated quality characteristic of all of our groups. Now, it wasn't too bad. It received a 3.55 out of 5 rating. That's 71% if you're kind of looking at a scale of 1 to 100. We're passing, but it was the lowest rated quality characteristic of all the ones for our groups. But also, growth was the number one characteristic that group participants across the board wanted to see improve. So when people were asked, what area of your groups would you like to see improve the most? They wanted to see growth improve. And so I think that's significant, especially since it's the emphasis of our groups. We really want to take the time to find ways that we can encourage people and create an atmosphere where others can grow. So let's talk about growth risks. The definition of a growth risk is any action or statement that is new to you or out of your comfort zone, but that also involves the possibility of a negative outcome. Okay, so a growth risk is something that's new. It's something that stretches you outside of your comfort zone, but also carries with it the possibility of a negative outcome. And the challenge of a growth risk is given within the context of a group. I think about Hebrews 10:24, where the author writes, "Let us spur one another on toward love and good deeds." I believe that within the context of Christian community, we are called to urge one another, to push one another, to grow in love and good deeds. And that's what growth risks are really all about. Why is this important? As I mentioned before, our groups are all about life change. What we want to see happen in our groups is people to grow and to mature in their relationship with Christ. And change and growth does not take place unless there is a period of stress, just like our human body. If you want to be able to grow, if you want to increase your strength, then you've got to take your body, your muscles through a period of stress, followed by a period of rest so that those muscles can grow. And I believe the same is true in our spiritual lives. A lot of times God will take us through a period of stress in our life in order to produce growth in us. And so we can be instruments of growth by helping people walk through these periods of stress by encouraging them to take these growth risks. Now, our tendency as human beings is to stay within our comfort zone. We don't want to do things that might produce a negative outcome. We don't want to do things that challenge us if we don't have to. And so that's why it's important for us to help people take those growth risks. A quote that I came across recently in a book that I'm reading is, "People will use any excuse not to grow. We have to stop giving them those excuses." And so one of the ways we do that is to look for opportunities to put growth risks in front of an individual. If you look at 1 Timothy chapter 4, verses 11 and 12, Paul encourages Timothy to take a growth risk. He talks about not letting people look down on Timothy because of his young age, because of his youth. But instead Paul encourages Timothy to set an example for the believers and to take that growth risk. There was a negative possibility there. He could have been discredited by the people. He could have been ignored. But Paul wanted him to take that growth risk so that he could improve as a person, also improve as a leader. So how do we do this? Just a few steps, practical steps to help us, help our members take those growth steps, those growth risks. Number one, clarify the issue. Take some time and be sure that you understand the issue related to growth in this person's life. And name that issue. Perhaps through one of your meetings, one of your members is talking about a relationship issue. and you realize that there's a growth step to be taken in that. And so clarify that issue first. What's going on in this relationship? What is it that you feel like is the next step for you in this relationship? Or maybe it's something at work. Maybe there's an issue at work and they need to take a growth step in that. And so take some time to clarify the issue. What's going on here? How are you feeling? And then the second part of that is to help them determine the next step. Don't prescribe the next step for them, but facilitate the discovery of what that next step needs to be. If we can determine our next step on our own, we're much more likely to take ownership of that, and also much more likely to follow through with that step. So once you've clarified the issue, then help them think through and process, okay, what is this growth risk? What is this next step that I need to take? Avoid the inclination that we have to be prescriptive and to try and help them by telling them what to do. Third, then just encourage them to take that next step. Let them know that you're behind them, that you're going to be praying for them and doing everything you can to support them within the context of this loving and supporting group. Encourage them to take the next step, to take that growth risk. And then finally, and probably most importantly, is follow up. Whenever you've encouraged someone to take that next step, be sure that you follow up with them. Set something specifically at that moment as a follow-up step for you. Whether it's inviting them to come back and share next week what happened, or perhaps maybe on a more personal level, you commit to connecting with them in some way through a phone call or email and say, hey, listen, I know you've got this big step in front of you this week at work. How about I give you a call on Friday just to see how things went? And that helps to encourage them. That provides follow-up, but it also provides accountability for that individual as they're looking to take that next step. So clarify the issue. Help them to come to a determination of what the next step is. Encourage them to take that growth risk, and then follow up. And if we can develop a culture within our groups of helping one another take growth risks and taking the next step in our relationship with God, I think we're going to see growth happen, and I think we're going to see the strength and the power of our groups really take off. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this, or if you were in the lab, just to review this again as a refresher. A couple of things to keep in mind. I'll be sending out an email soon. Maybe by the time you watch this, you've already gotten it, about some events that are coming up toward the end of our time with our groups. But really take these last couple of months of your time together with your group to find opportunities to encourage people to take the next step. Thanks a lot. Have a great week.